So the Jeep needs rear brakes again, and as usual, got the lug nuts all loose, and this one's loose. I left it on here because I need to hit the tire with a sledgehammer to break the bond between the wheel and the brake drum, or the rotor. A trusty 8-pound sledge makes pretty easy work of that. I left one lug on because I didn't want to have that wheel fall off when I hit it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pry the brake shoes away from the rotor here with a screwdriver. The pads, I should say. Shoes are typically drum brakes. There. It's proving to be a little bit difficult to do, so I may end up turning off the camera while I do it. And I'm not too concerned about the pads or the rotor because I am replacing it. I knew that the last time I rotated tires I was looking at the rotors, and the rotors, I thought when the brakes went bad the rotors were going to need to be replaced, so I don't have to be too careful about this. And I really am not being too successful in getting anything behind there to pry them away. There, I felt some movement there in the caliper. That may be enough to get them started to come off. You don't have to get a lot of play, just need to get past any rust or ridge that's on the rotor so that you can get the shoes off of the rotor pads. And by the way, before you start this, make sure that you have your parking brake disengaged, because that will hold the rotor on, because the parking brake shoes are in here, and they are shoes. Okay, I have already loosened these two bolts. They were pretty easy to loosen, and if you notice, they're not very long, so they're only bolting into here. And this does have flats on it so that whenever you go to tighten it, you can put a wrench on that and tighten these to hold it on. So I'm gonna, well, you know what, while I'm here, let me just see if I can pull that caliper off, because if I can, I don't need to do anything else. It's moving. Oh, by the way, when you get your pads, there's two different types. Two of them have this little wear indicator on them, that when the brakes wear down to that, it makes a noise. Two do not. So you have to pay attention to, when you're taking that off, where the one with the wear indicator is and whether it's up or down. So Okay, rotor is, or caliper is off. And what I will do, so we'll find that wear indicator. It's up in the back here on the rear pad. And I'm noticing that my inside pad, let me zoom in on that. Let's see if I can get some light on that wear indicator. It's hard to see on the video, but it's right up in here. That's the wear indicator. So it's up and on the rear or the inside pad. Since I'm noticing that the inside pad is much more worn than the outside pad, might be an indication that these are not moving very well. That one did. Well, they're free. They're not hard to move at all. Maybe it's just how Jeep pads wear. So now what I've got to do is take the pads out of the mounting bracket. And I just now realized that the mounting bracket's going to have to come off, because I won't be able to get the rotor off without taking it off. So there's going to be 2 more bolts there to replace that. And they are fairly big ones here and here. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe I'll point with a screwdriver so that my black gloves weren't. They're here and here. So that's going to have to come off. And then there are clips that either I dropped one off of here or it was never in there. But there are clips that get inserted here, and new ones are provided with the new brake shoes. So I'm going to go find a wrench of the proper size for that caliper mount, and I'm going to remove that. Okay, that ended up being an 18mm bolt there, but now what I've done is I've gotten my ratchet wedged in there with the socket on it, and I can't get it out and I can't turn it because I don't have enough leverage on it, and I've got a rubber handle on this ratchet, so it's not made to be used with a bar on the end of it. So I'm going to have to fiddle with this until I can get it out. It went in, so I know it'll come out, but I'm going to do that off camera. So I shut the camera off and it took about 10 seconds. So the socket is still on there, but it's loose. I knew it would come out. Now I've got to find out what I have that I can get in there with. I think I may have to use the trick of putting an open end wrench on it and then flipping using another one to give me more leverage. So that other one I was trying was a 1/2-inch ratchet, and now I've got a 3/8. However, the 3/8 is 12-point socket. I like to use 6-point sockets whenever something's tight, so as to minimize the chance of rounding them off. So I'm going to make sure I get a good grip on that before I put any extra leverage on this breaker bar. Okay, I was able to turn it with just the breaker bar. That's the bottom one. And top one's up here, so hopefully that'll come just as easily. Yep, it did. So now I might be able to use a tire ratchet on there if there's room enough to get it in there. I happen to have one right here. It's on loosen. See there? It's tight in there. I don't know how much juice this ratchet has in it, but it's not. The power isn't working. It says it's full. Oh, so it's just tight. Okay, now I've got that tightened up against the stabilizer link. Everything's tight. So I'm going to get a pair of needle nose pliers and change that to tighten. Give myself some room to get the ratchet off of it and then take the bolt out. Okay, I decided the way to go after that is probably to use a pair of channel locks to grip either the head of the socket, it has, or the bolt that has a flange on it, or to grab the actual socket and just tighten it in some. Probably going to need to grab the socket because there's other stuff in the way. It should, if I can get a grip on it, it should turn in easily because that would be the ratcheting action side of the wrench. Hitting there, everywhere. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but as I turn it, the wrench is clicking as if it were ratcheting back. Now I wish I hadn't used that power wrench. Gonna try to reach in there. I'm sure I'll be blocking the camera, so I'm gonna shut it off, but I'm gonna try to reach behind here and turn the switch on the ratchet. I think I've got the switch turned on the ratchet, so I'm gonna try hitting the power on it. Well, that's still going, wanting to go. Loosen. Try some more. That took all 30 seconds once I was able to get in there without trying to get in the way of the camera. So, at least that one's loose. I know I can get it out easily. Let's see, should I try this one? You know what? I learned my lesson. I'm going to get a regular ratchet, 3/8 inch, so that I have more clearance, and I'm going to take those 2 bolts out. That should be easy to do now that I've broken them loose. Okay, got the 3/8 inch ratchet. Should be able to take that stuff off easily now. There's one. That should be the hard one. This should be the easy one because there seems to be a lot more room to work the ratchet here. Sometimes the hardest part of this job is getting the rotor off. I hope that's not the case today. But once those 2 bolts are out, the bracket comes out easily. And pay attention to how these clips are in here, because you've got to put new clips in. And there's a good visual, I think, of how the pad with the wear sensor goes in. So when you're putting it back together, you want to make sure these are free. I maintained these and greased them well last time, and they're still really good. I'm not going to pull those out. But slip the pad out of the bracket. And what I will do is I will remove that, and off camera I will clean that up with a wire wheel so that you're not fighting rust putting it in. Okay, now you can use, if you're replacing the rotor, you can use a hammer and you have a shot at it right here. This looks like it'll come off. Right now, probably the brake shoes inside there for the emergency brake are probably hanging it up, even though the brake is off. Let me try to push in on that, just in case it's pulling on it. And there you have it. This is actually pretty clean. A lot of times you have rust on the flange where the lug nuts are, or the studs. This, gonna back this off a little bit. This looks pretty clean. That's not too rusty. Not much to clean up there. You just put a little bit of, carefully, only putting it on the metal parts here, not getting it on here, but a little bit of WD-40 or something like that, so that it comes off easily the next time. But that's it for the disassembly on this side. I am going to go get the new rotor, and I am going to use brake cleaner on it, because they come with a little bit of oil on them to keep them from rusting as they sit in warehouses and such. But that's not all that exciting, so I'm probably just going to do that off camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the inside of this and then mount it on the hub and spray the outside. That way I don't have to hold it. And I'm not going to try to get any of it inside where the hub and the flange meet, because if I can avoid taking the oil off of that, that'll help it so it doesn't stick to the hub. Once you've got it on, it makes it easier to clean off the outside. So, next step is going to be, as I said I was going to do off camera, I'm going to clean this up and get these clips installed, new ones, and get ready to install this back onto the axle. So I've cleaned these up and I've put a little bit of brake caliper grease in those slots, and now the place where the pad actually rides has to go in there. I'm probably not going to be able to do this on camera because, oh, there's, hopefully that's good enough video of it, but the clips go outside where the pads are, both sides, and then once we're done we'll slip the pads in there and we'll put it on the car or the Jeep. So all my clips are in. I am going to just touch the edges, the tips of these where they ride in these things, just with a little bit of grease, and then insert them into the caliper mount. And I'm going to do that off camera because I need all my hands to do it, and it's too difficult to keep it in the frame. So I just did a whole speech and the camera wasn't running. What I had said though was these clips that the pads ride in, they were making it difficult to get the pads into the caliper mount, and what I had to do was take the handle of my screwdriver and use it as a hammer to hammer that into the tab on the shoe, on the pad. This tab right here. To hammer that in so that it would go into those clips that it's designed to ride in. So the other thing that I was saying is that we're going to push these pads in up against the rotor once the caliper mount is in. And the final thing we have to do is push the piston back in the caliper so that it'll fit over the new pads, because the new pads are fatter, thicker than what I took off. So without pushing the piston back, the caliper's not going to fit over those pads. So get that good and tight. Make sure that other one's good and tight. And we're ready to tap these pads in. They're sliding in those clips. And I'll do the other one from the other side, and then I'll show you compressing the piston in the caliper. After that one looks like it's pretty much all the way in already. Notice curved end follows the curve of the rotor, both on the inside and the outside. The wear indicator is on the upper inside, just like it was on the old one. The other pad just goes in. I'm going to put a little bit of brake grease on these, or on the caliper where it meets these, so that that doesn't squeak. Here is my caliper piston compression tool. You can also do this with a big C-clamp. I've done it that way before I bought this. But basically what you're doing with this is following the curve of the rotor, as it were. And I have to open this up a little bit more so that it fits in. Okay. So basically it fits in like that and presses against the ears on the caliper, and you just tighten it down and it will push the piston back in. Now this Jeep has a manual parking brake. Some of the electric ones, you have to put them into maintenance mode in order to get them to compress. I know that was the case on my wife's 2014 Ford Fusion. I don't think that's, I know it's not the case on this, because when you're tightening this, you can see this piston is going back. When you do it on one that is electronically controlled, that thing is solid. You can't get any movement on it. And that's how you know you have to put it in maintenance mode. So that should be enough. I guess I should just wind this all the way out, because I know I'm going to have to wind it out to get it on the other side, which I'm probably not going to video because it's just the same thing. Oops. I didn't put the grease on it, and it appears to be still needing to be compressed a little bit, so that's going to take a minute. Basically, I am going to lube the piston here and these two ears, because I know that's where they're going to hit on here. If I try to put the lube on here, I may have it in the wrong place. So I'm going to do that off camera and slip that on there. Or maybe I'll start videoing it again when I'm slipping it on. Okay, I got that pushed back further, and I lubricated, as I told you, the piston and the two ears, so that when they hit the brake pad, it will be lubricated where they're hitting it. And it just goes there. The two little bolts that hold the caliper on. Go in. And I'll have to get me a wrench to hold this, and a wrench or a ratchet to tighten those bolts, and we're done. Now the most important thing of this whole thing is when you get in the car after you've done this, remember that caliper piston has been pushed all the way back. And as a result, the first time you hit the brakes, or maybe the first several times you hit the brakes, all it's going to do is push it further towards the brake pad. So you want to make sure that when you get in that car, you start the engine, you pump that brake pedal vigorously until you get a good, and wouldn't you know it, I got the wrong wrench, until you get a good pedal. Long time ago, when my son was a teenager, we did a brake job on his car, and I told him do that. He got in, he said, I pumped the brakes, but whenever he went to pump the brakes, or to use the brakes, I should say, the car didn't stop. He ran into his mother's brand new car. So it is very, very, very important to make sure that you have a good hard pedal before you move that car. So that's it for this side. I'm not going to video the other side unless there's something I discover that's worth commenting on. So hopefully that's the end of this video. Have a nice day. Thanks for watching. I still have to put the tire back on, but I'm not going to video that. If you can't take a tire off and put it on and torque it, you maybe shouldn't be trying brakes. I am going to rotate my tires since I have the Jeep up on a lift, and that'll take me a while, but I'm not going to video that. That's just moving the front tires to the back and the back to the front. So have a nice day. There's one minor clarification that I came up with on the driver's side, and that is on the wear sensor. This one's on the bottom, and the reason is they're made identically, so when you flip sides, if you put them both on the inside, they are going to be one up and one down. So I guess it depends on the manufacturer of the vehicle and the manufacturer of the brake pads as to how they go on. That's it.